Next time someone says, oh, I'm going to static stretch to lengthen my muscles, you can say, well, that's bullshit. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the video series Why Stretching Doesn't Work and why our idea of static stretching is outdated and actually is not what we should be doing. In part 1, I spoke about why static stretching doesn't increase the mechanical properties and mechanical flexibility of our muscles, and I discussed all the science in part 1. So if you're interested, feel free to go and watch that one and then come back to this one. But essentially, the overall big clickbaity summary is that stretching at a mechanical level does nothing for muscle length. And I know that's a big call to make, but if you watch part 1, you'll understand why. Now, part 2 is going to be a practical application. You're probably all thinking, well, if static stretching doesn't do anything, what's the point? Well, there is some research into a new way of stretching that may actually increase our muscle length truly. It may be a bit shocking for you all to realize that you've been doing stretching the wrong way this whole time. But I mean, it's just this thing that's accepted in the fitness industry and exercise that you just need to stretch. But no one really knows about the science about mechanical muscle properties and thinking, well, does this stretch actually induce muscle changes? So essentially, is there a better way to stretch? Yes, there is, kind of. It's a bit of an advanced technique and it's probably not suitable for most people. A study in 2014 set out to answer this very question, which was, do muscles get longer in response to eccentric exercise? They looked at the vastus lateralis, which is our huge quad muscle on the lateral side of our leg, and it's a very, very vast bulk of muscle. And the protocols they said for the participants to perform were performed on an isokinetic dynamometer, which is essentially a machine which allows you to load the eccentric portion of lifts. It's almost like a reverse leg extension, if that kind of makes sense. 53 people took part for 10 days, training 3 times per week and 5 sets of exercise per training day of eccentric leg exercise. Protocol 1 was a low load magnitude, which was one leg was exercised at 65% of their 1 rep max eccentrically. Protocol 2 was a high load magnitude, so the exact same thing, eccentric exercise on one leg, except this was now at 100% of their 1 rep max. Protocol 3 was a short muscle length, so it was the same load, essentially a 1 rep maximum, so 100% load, but the knee was between 25 to 65 degrees. So essentially the muscle was shorter in length. And protocol 4 was a high lengthening velocity. So it was 100% of their 1 rep max again, but now instead of the shorter length of the muscle fiber, this one was essentially exercised across the entire range of the muscle fiber from 25 degrees all the way up to 100 degrees of range. And essentially this group was training their eccentric muscle at a really high velocity. So what did the researchers find? Well, over the course of the 10-week block, every single group stayed the exact same in terms of muscle length apart from one group. And take a guess which one it was? Number 4. Number 4 increased their muscle length by 14%. And it seems to be something about the fact that eccentrically training and exercise at a high velocity seems to induce a biomechanical stimulus for the muscle to actually get longer. And the high velocity itself seems to be a stimulus for the body to say, okay, I need to add more sarcomeres in series and thus make the muscle fibers longer in length. So what does this mean practically? Well, to induce any kind of muscular changes, we probably need to be training eccentrically at a high velocity. So basically we need to be stretching the eccentric portion of lifts at a very high velocity. But the problem with this is for beginners, eccentrically training lifts is already hard enough, let alone doing it at a high velocity. This is going to be a very advanced training protocol in order to stretch. And if you're really keen on stretching a muscle, you're probably better off just doing static stretching. Even though it doesn't work, it's going to have that neurological adaptation rather than the muscle itself. And that's probably enough for beginners, just to have that neurological, oh, I feel a bit better, that sort of feeling, rather than trying to do this advanced training technique of a high eccentric velocity of a lift. Like imagine trying to train an eccentric portion of a heavy squat at a really high velocity, probably not going to be very good for your tendons and bones as a beginner. So unless you're really advanced and looking to legitimately lengthen your muscle in a proven way, this probably doesn't apply to you. And this is the problem with some studies, is that they find this exact thing in a controlled study environment, but in the real world, it's not going to be very applicable to most people because this advanced training technique, it's so advanced that beginners or even intermediates, it's probably not going to be much benefit for you. But if you wanted to know exactly how you lengthen a muscle fiber legitimately, this one seems to have the most promise in terms of the research at the moment, is that it seems to be eccentric exercise done at a high velocity. I thought I'd let you guys know this because I'm all about bringing you the research and just interesting tidbits of information. Next time someone says, oh, I'm going to static stretch to lengthen my muscles, you can say, well, That's bullshit, because it doesn't do anything at a mechanical level. It's all about just bringing you that neurological adaptation where you feel a bit better, but mechanically it's not going to do much for the muscle fiber itself. The eccentric portion does seem to have some promise, as in this study. But yeah, I thought I'd just let you know, it's really up to you. The neurological adaptation can still be important. Like, let's not discredit the neurological adaptation. That's still a valid adaptation where, you know, if it makes you feel better, by all means, static stretch, even dynamic stretching, if you can train that eccentric portion. The people who say, you know, I'm stretching this muscle to make it longer and get more flexible, you can say, not really true. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope I've brought you the science on stretching as best I could. If you want to see any more topics, just let me know in the comments. I just want to get the education out, really. I want to get the education out and keep you guys safe and healthy as much as I can. Thank you so much for all the support, and I will see you in the next video. Fitness Science, signing out.